Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. How you doing, Sejan?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, man.
I'm glad to hear it. Do you want to get a little up our own asses for a second? Smack ourselves on the back? This is going to end so poorly. This is
always.
You know what? And I know this is a mistake, what we're doing right now, but I'm just so pleased about it. CJ, do you know that we have been the number 5 philosophy podcast for the last week? Like, consistently in the number 5 slot. No shift. That's crazy to me. Thanks to all of our listeners in Europe. Especially Madrid and Germany.
We have definitely caught shit over the years for even being in that category, but at the end of the day, I have yet to hear an example of that category that isn't also bullshit. So,
I mean, the fact of the matter is,
games are bullshit. That's us.
What is philosophy if not talking about your lives and trying to understand the meaning behind it? And honestly, that's what we do every week. If you're coming to this looking for some comedy podcast, I don't even think we're funny. No offense to either of us as I laugh into my microphone, but it's kind of the truth.
We laugh. Right. No, we laugh so that we don't cry. That's exactly. Talk about a philosophy.
I mean, and think about all the philosophical things that we do preach, like tempering expectations so that your life is not any harder than it needs to be. Right?
Yeah.
Prepare for the ice cream expect the ice cream cone, but prepare for the rain cloud. Right? That we're looking at that stuff, right? It's just, but it does feel nice because you're not wrong. We do catch flack for the fact that we categorize this as a philosophy podcast. I think it'll be just part of what happens forever. But it seems disingenuous to call ourselves entertainment or comedy because I don't think we're either of those things. I think we're just two schmucks who are trying to get by day. And these weekly discussions between the two of us are part of how we figure that out. And if we can help just one person to get through their minutia, then that makes me smile. And
yes, for 10 cents a day, you too can save a Devin or a Sejan.
Well, save yourself, right? It's not just about, this is not their announcement where we're going to start soliciting money from you people. The other beautiful thing about the Say Report is the fact that it is for us, by us. You know what? I can't say that. Apologies to the people who that actually belongs to. But the Say Report is ours. We are fully in control of it, and that's why we accept no money from, advertisers. We have a couple of times, but mostly for tax reasons or for me to feel morally all right about something that I'm doing. I don't want to give my money to buy DLC for River City Girls 2. I was disappointed by the game. But if someone wants to buy a sponsored segment on the show, well, all more power to them, right? I don't know. Right? But I think that's the real philosophy that we pitch here is finding a way in your own logic to jumble through the bullshit.
Yeah, no, I mean, humans are complex. Humans are hypocritical. Humans are shitty. Humans are beautiful. And it's hard sometimes to hold all of that in your head at the same time, right? This idea that you can like a thing and hate a thing at the same time, which is, I think, something that we have been exploring since day one, is how do you navigate in all of this shit? How do you exist in the world today when you are a nerd, when you are a super fan, or when you're not connected to the thing that it seems like everybody else is connected to? So we just hope that we're making it easier for people out there to deal with some bullshit.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? If we can help you deal with your bullshit, an episode at a time, or even just 5 minutes when you throw us on in the background and then switch to something else, then I feel good about that. But at the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is mine when I hit the pillow. And right now, I'm pretty all right with myself. I don't know if I'd say content, but I'm not like upset about my choices when I go to bed every night, and that feels pretty good. I'm just gonna be straight out about that. All right, so there's your existential moment, right? The requisite existential moment of the Say Report, so that we can keep our status as a philosophy podcast. Why don't we talk about the bullshit we did this weekend, Sajan? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go with this bullshit? Like, because I have questions.
I don't know how long of a conversation it'll be, so I'll just drop that I got to go see Hoppers yesterday.
Bitch, I saw Hoppers yesterday, too. I don't know why I called you a bitch. I do know why I called you a bitch. I know exactly why I called you a bitch. It's because I am currently 7 episodes through the 8-episode second season of Ted, and it's wonderful. Nice. But they've had a liberal usage of the B word in season 2 of Ted.
That doesn't surprise me, I guess.
You know what, though?
Is it like plot significant?
There's some plot significant reasons for it. It's good. It's not that. But fuck, I want to talk about Hoppers. I would really like to talk about Hoppers. In fact, if I may be so bold, I'd like to address a lot of the Pixar movies that have happened since Onward released March 6, 2020, because that was the last Pixar movie I saw in theaters.
Okay.
So yeah. First of all, if we're going to talk about Hoppers, we're going to talk about, I can't say that it's my favorite piece of trivia on IMDb, but it's the one that has been living rent-free in my mind since I read the trivia on IMDb. Apparently, this is Pixar's 30th feature film. And let me see if I can find the piece. I want to make sure I read it exactly as it is written on IMDb. 7 people have found this helpful. Only 1 person has voted it down. And no, that person is not me. Hoppers is apparently Pixar's 4th film with a human protagonist who doesn't stay human the entire film. Pop quiz, jackass. What are the other 3?
Well, so no, one of them is definitely Soul, because I've got some things that I want to say myself about this that I was also kind of feeling when I was watching Soul. So I know that for a fact.
Yeah, Soul is certainly the first one that jumped to my mind, because Joe eventually becomes a cat. Spoilers for Soul.
Well, right, and we also see them become souls, right?
Yeah,
like we
exactly.
don't, yeah. But yes, becoming a cat, definitely. I don't know if I had to think of the other 2. I'm going through as many of them as I can in my head, but you know, the truth of the matter is that like there's a legitimate library here to the point where I don't even know if I could tell you if I've seen every single Pixar movie at this point. What are the other 2?
So at least the second one would be Turning Red, right? In my estimation, the fact that she becomes a red panda, and then that red panda transformation.
Turning Red Pixar?
It is.
I was
a Pixar
thinking that
film.
was a Disney one.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing, right? It is considered one of the 30 Pixar films. So Turning Red would be the second one in my estimation. Yeah. And then I cannot think of a third one. So, like, I will admit that this Pop Quiz Jackass was a little flawed right from the start. Right. Because I was asking you legitimately, I'm going to send you the same Wikipedia list that I'm working off of for our big Pixar situation before we dive into Hoppers. It's just off of Wikipedia. It'll be in the supplemental materials if you're at home. The only other one looking through this list that I think fits the bill is Brave. But Merida never changes into anything other than a human. Her mother does, and her brothers do.
Her mother does.
But those aren't protagonists. The protagonist of...
Coco. Coco might be an interesting one to address because he turns into a skeleton.
A corpse?
Which is arguably... Yeah. So,
like,
that might be the one that they're... Oh, no, Luca. Duh.
Well, Luca, he's a fisherman. He's a mermaid.
I guess he's a fisherman to begin with.
So he's not a human.
Yeah,
he but
I would throw money down that they're talking about either Luca or Coco when they say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that I could not think of... We went through all of them. We went through this entire list. And, like, if protagonist is going to be the word that you used, it needs to be the driving force behind it. And legitimately, I can't think of any other one that features a transformation where the person starts as human. Because Coco, I don't know, does Miguel ever become a skeleton, or does he just go to the other side alive? It's been a while since I've seen Coco.
I mean, technically, he... Nah, that's a good question. Man, I don't know what they would be considering. I would need somebody to break that down for me. I'm not going to argue, like, that there's definitely not, because I do see, I do see an argument for Brave. I do see an argument for Coco, for, all that. But, like, but no, I don't know. Maybe they're talking about Wall-E because of that whole thing where they did put a human brain in him. Do you remember that whole scene?
That scene is so uncanon, though. Like, I know that we've all seen the Wall-E scene where Wall-E has a human brain inside of him, but, like, that they can't be talking about that. To be fair, and also, it wouldn't count because
I think it was just a reference to the Daleks.
He also starts as a brain. We never see Wall-E as a human being. We just see him as a brain and then a robot who loves Hello Dolly.
Oh man,
we do have.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the third one would be. But was that your big your big complaint right now about the trivia? Is that they didn't parse out what the other ones actually were? Like,
it's going through and I was hoping. Let's be honest, right? I've said it a million times. I'm paying tribute to Siegen once more for the fact that I have seen every single Pixar movie. It is a thing that I vowed to do. It was my 365 movie year, so I was trying to watch 365 movies that I had never seen before. Cars 3 had been announced, so I'm like, this seems like a good time to go back and fill in the gaps. Because I will be completely honest with you, after Monsters Incorporated, and honestly, I had skipped The Bug's Life up to that point as well, I kind of did not see a Pixar film until Ratatouille. And you know what? That sounds like it's a lot of movies, but that's just me saying I didn't see Finding Nemo, The Incredible, or the first Cars film. Like, but but arguably, those three are kind of the three that people point at when they're like, oh my God, I fucking love Pixar. Like, one of the reasons I never saw Finding Nemo was I kept getting into conversations with the kind of people that, as an 18-year-old with, like, a lot of opinions in my brain, were like, if you like Finding Nemo, I don't want to give it my time. And then a young man named Siegen Sarowick dragged me to go see Ratatouille, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm missing? This is what I'm missing. It's like this type of stuff. So occasionally you get a Ratatouille.
I'm trying to figure out if maybe there was like a Disney one that maybe somebody was assuming, because we see that happen all the time, assuming that the Disney one was because they're Spies in Disguise, which is actually a
DreamWorks,
even
right?
A step further removed, which is no, it's Fox, but it got picked up. But it happened just before Disney stepped in. Like, I think legitimately that it was put out as a Fox film, and by the time it hit Blu-ray, it was under a Disney banner.
Okay.
So like there is something maybe there that
could be.
Like,
I mean,
maybe
it's certainly not
confused.
Pixar. Like, that's the other thing, is that the Pixar of it all. Like, when I'm like, well, my mother and sister brought up Brave, and I'm like, well, first of all, Merida never changes. As far as I can remember, Merida never changes. It's all about her mother and her brothers eating the magic pie that turned them into bears. These are real words. But also, I didn't think Brave was actually a Pixar film. I thought it was a Disney film under the Disney banner. Because there was that weird push to make Merida a Disney princess, which always seemed a little off, because they didn't do it with, like, Giselle from Enchanted. But that was because of licensing rights for Amy Adams' face, come to find out.
Yeah, I don't think it was that hard of a stretch. I don't think they had to push, like, she is a Disney princess. Like,
right, exactly.
One of my favorite things to point to whenever somebody wants to talk about who qualifies and who doesn't as a Disney princess is I point to that scene in Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Right, Right.
where they're all having the sleepover together, which is honestly one of my I think a fantastic, like one of my favorite like late Disney animated like moments is that, right? There's some great stuff. Like I remember when I was a kid, the moment where Robin Hood dresses up for the
The
competition,
archery
right? Like I
contest as
love
the
that
stork.
scene.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that scene too. I mean, that's
Yeah,
so
like
it's
this
iconic.
is
Like,
on that level for me, right? Of like,
well, I mean, and to be
uh,
honest, using that scene from Ralph Breaks the Internet is why I'm like, I don't think Brave was just a straight Pixar movie. I think it's considered a Disney film. Like, it's such a weird distinction between the two of them. So then, before we get to Hoppers, did you even see Onward in theaters? Is going to be a question
yes.
that I ask you. Okay, good. I didn't know if you had the opportunity before the world
I think we've talked
changed.
about Onward before.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, you weren't a huge fan.
Oh,
But
I loved
I
Onward.
really,
I don't know.
I adore that movie.
I loved Onward. So I don't know who
Okay,
you talked
good.
to who didn't enjoy that one. I think that movie handled a lot of it really well, but I also could see why people wouldn't enjoy it. And I think making that argument, you could have put it on me. Because people were not happy with Onward, and I didn't understand why. So
It's
then
just,
I parsed
there's
out
such
why.
good. I mean, on top of the fact that I actually do really like the story, but that's where I think a lot of people get caught up is in like the events and the story of that particular movie. The world of that movie is a fucking blast and gorgeous. They're like Pixar's always look good, you know, they're always pushing the envelope on what they do, but like something in that movie felt like they struck like a really cool kind of art that they hadn't really ever done before. You know, I'm thinking specifically of like kind of the content of like the old rickety van with the graffiti on the side of you know like the
Yeah.
old like 80s rock van, right? Driving through like giant beanstalks and like magical worlds and stuff was just something about that just worked really well for me. So like Onward, I hold in a very special place because while I don't think it's my favorite Pixar movie, I think that it does something that a lot of other Pixar movies don't necessarily do these days. You know, not since the original days. Because if we ever talked about like the way that Pixar started with this concept of I think like 10 movies were like really kind of in the water when they first kind of got off the ground. Toy Story obviously being one of them, right?
Yeah,
I think the
Cars
last one
was
in that,
one
if
of
I remember
them.
correctly, was Wall-E, right?
Yeah, yep. Cars, I believe, was one of
Yeah.
I know of 4. There's the Pixar 4 that like gets thrown around
I mean,
a bit.
So Bugs Life was so it's all the early ones, right? Like so like Toy Story, Bugs Life, uh everything up basically up until Wall-E were these ideas that they not Finding Dory but Finding Nemo, like these were stories that they had kind of already had bubbling and were doing tests on because, you know, on top of being an animation house, they are also an engineering house, like computer engineering and like computer graphics and the way and the work that they do. They are consistently working on, I mean, they have a research and development department, right? Like
Yeah.
it's wild the kind of work that they're doing outside of just making movies, right? And so they had this portfolio essentially of all these different things that they were kind of working on in animation bits and stuff like that. Presto is a really early proof of concept for their engine, right? And that's why it's called the Presto engine and stuff. So like it is a pretty deep dive of like also like tech knowledge on top of being an art house. So like there's this whole idea that they're constantly working on new stuff and new ideas. And what we've seen in the back half of Pixar is a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily in artists' mind for a long period of time. Let me put it that way. They were not ruminating on it as much as they were on something like Toy Story, you know, or something like Cars. So there's there's a sense in the later Pixar movies that it's a little bit more slapdash and a little less prestigious because of that. And you know, I don't know how to argue that because I do think that there is definitely not as much heft behind some of their later films as there is. But that doesn't necessarily mean to me that that makes it bad or worse. It just means that it's not the same. It's not the same like target, right? They're not aiming for the same level of artistry in some regards in this as they are in that. You know, like we talk about Turning Red that I didn't even realize was a Pixar movie, right? Because I don't know if there's that kind of depth in the artistry of that movie, but I will say this, conceptually, like pushing the envelope in terms of like story content and character, I think is right on brand for Pixar. So it's a toss up for with the later ones. I think you got to really kind of look at them and see like, and I think that's why people get so kind of caught up on how it just doesn't feel like it used to, is because it just isn't, and it is never going to be again, I don't think.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of factors there. To stick with Turning Red, just brief. You talk about conceptually how it feels very Pixar. The technology that they developed for that one, because they talk about how, like, Sully, each of his, like, fur was individual, and they talk about Merida's hair and how much they put into that. Turning Red is another one of those examples where, like, the fur on May is, like, they took the time on that. And then on all of the other red panda women that we see throughout that movie, like, they give them all unique fur based upon age and things. Like, if they developed how to do fur in Monsters, Inc., perfected hair physics in something like Brave, Turning Red is like the final thesis on, we got this.
And Sully is definitely the like go-to example in Monsters Inc. for like when they were doing that kind of advancement. But you know what struck me as a kid, just talking about these kind of moments that really stick with me from Disney movies, is the Abominable Snowman. You know, when they meet Cliff up there in the mountains.
Yeah. I love that moment. I do. That's my favorite John Ratzenberger cameo.
But I think the fur on him is like something, and because in addition to the fur, it's also the snow, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a couple of different elements in that scene.
There's movements where he sloughs snow off of him when he gets into his cave that like have stuck with me. It's like, wow, that was gorgeous. Like that's how snow really moves. So yeah. So, but like the reason why, like as I was sitting, as Hoppers was about to start yesterday, I realized, oh my God, I haven't seen a Pixar film in theaters since Onward. Do you know roughly how many Pixar films have released since Onward? I know you have a list in front of you, but like if you could ballpark it before looking at that list.
I would probably say a dozen, maybe.
It's 8.
Like, because Onward was...
Yeah.
Oh, it's 8. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit less than I thought.
It's a little bit less than that. No, but... and that's...
I was going to say Onward was just about pre-COVID, if I remember correctly, right?
It was a week before COVID shut down the world.
Shit.
That's...
Oh, my God. Okay.
That's one of the things.
Right.
2020.
Okay.
March 6, 2020. Was when Onward released, and it was the whole thing of like the next week the world was like in the lockdown and everything, and then a week after that it was available on Disney Plus, which for a lot of fans of Pixar, they view that as sort of the downfall of the company. Not even any of the things that you discussed were like, these are not long ruminated stories, they are producing them a little bit faster. Pixar sort of became the place where these personal stories from the creators got to have their moment in the sun. And I dug that. I honestly dig that. Because before we'd see that in the shorts. I think about like the Sanjay Force one. The one where it's the Indian boy playing with the superheroes. And then like likening it to his religious icons. Like in this real interesting way to sort of like bridge that gap with his father. I really love that. I really love that short. But like those more personal stories had sort of been relegated to the short level so that somebody could like kind of prove their worth to become like a director of a feature. But now that like in the wake of Onward, Pixar started to look like these are Disney Plus exclusives. And that and that's a real issue. Like, the fact that there were other people in the theater with us for a 10:30 a.m. Hoppers kind of surprised me. Because all I hear about is how people do not go see Pixar films in theaters anymore. And I know that can't possibly be true, but it's sort of the, like...
I mean, remember, Inside Out 2 was the most successful movie of the year last year. In
2 years ago. That was 2 years ago, but yeah. And currently, Hoppers is kicking ass. 13.2 million in its opening.
I think there's a little bit more of a nuance to it. That what it felt like is not that Pixar. In a lot of ways, I don't know if I'm trying to make sure that we frame this correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of COVID, but even before COVID, there were people already talking about how Pixar wasn't the same. And part of that was that we were in the middle of that like hate culture where we would hate watch shit, or we would just be betting on things to fail because they had been so successful. We wanted to see them brought down a notch,
Mm-hmm.
and tell me I'm wrong about that. Like that's the attitude we had in the 2010s. So there was a lot of people that were already kind of hating on Pixar, and I kind of want to remove them from the calculation because that is covered by what I was saying before. They didn't feel like it was the same as it used to be. They had a lot of problems with the ways that things were going and didn't feel like they hit as hard as they used to, blah blah blah, right? Then when COVID hits, you end up with a whole other group of people who are feeling like Pixar in a lot of ways is being treated poorly. They're fans of Pixar, but they don't love what Disney has been doing to them once COVID hits, because as you said, they start to feel like they're Disney Plus exclusives. And what it is that Disney uses, like basically cashes in on the Pixar artistic value by saying like we're going to relegate these to being just at home. We're going to start seeing if we can move away from theaters, because that was always the dream for these studios, is if they could cut out the actual theater system and just get direct cash from the consumers. It like that's what they want, and they're still working on it. Let's not act like they've somehow shied away from that, but they've definitely dialed it back in the last few years. So I think things like like Hoppers and like Inside Out 2 and stuff like that, I think that part of the reason that people have been dying to go and see them is because it's seeing Pixar being treated right again, being put on the big screen, stuff like that. So I think I do think there's an element where I don't think people necessarily blame Pixar for the way that it's been going for the last last 6 years or so, but rather specifically the way that Disney has treated the Pixar brand the last half a decade.
Yeah, I would never blame Pixar for that. And I don't think Pixar's making those decisions. I think they're, to quote John Oliver, business daddy, has said, well, we're going to put yourself out on Disney Plus. And, honestly, that's what Soul, Luca, and Turning Red really had. And, Soul, I don't think ever got a theatrical release. But then Turning Red and Luca, they had, the theatrical release in 2024. Where they brought him back to the theaters for one weekend to finally be able to see them in theater. But prior to that, those three films, and Onward, I mean, it definitely got a theatrical release. You and I both experienced it in a theater. Mm-hmm. But then it came to Disney Plus. Let me just confirm if it's on here. No, it's not. They don't have it on there. But it came to Disney Plus, I think March 20th. Its a theatrical release was March 6th. And I believe before the end of March in 2020, you could watch it on Disney Plus. And it wasn't one of those ones like Mulan, where you had to pay extra for it. It was just included with the subscription. And, I mean, I understand why, because Onward, in addition to, being the new Pixar, they put a lot behind it in terms of what it's Tom Holland. It's one of the Chris's. I don't remember which Chris.
It's Chris Pratt.
It's Pratt, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Tom Holland. It's Chris Pratt. Yeah.
Yeah. So it had a lot of Marvel in it. It's also one of the first ones where... Sorry, go ahead. It had a lot of Marvel in it. And then when you consider that their mother is played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who then goes on to become Valentina. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's just it's also one of the first instances that pops to mind when you think about the ways we talk about Disney coming in and really starting to put their foot down and shape things. We kind of hear about it specifically starting with Cars 2, right? Disney comes in and says, you guys have to do a sequel. You're making too much money. Cars specifically, merchandise wise, is just fucking like floating the ship basically for about 10 years. Cars merchandise is what Disney is in the business of making. Yeah. So when they come to Pixar and they're just like, all right, you guys have slowly started to run out of other thoughts, of your own ideas, but we need you to keep making stuff, so you're going to do this. And they propose Cars 2, right? And that's kind of the myth behind Cars 2. I can't speak to the specifics or if it's even true, but that is definitely the way that people view that movie, right? And so in that same vein, Onward becomes kind of one of the first one of the big examples that people think of because of the lesbian relationship in it that gets completely played down, right? And that's a huge thing, because that ends up kind of being a story for Disney and Pixar's relationship all the way through Hoppers. Like, there's conversations about Disney coming in and saying, no, you're going to make this more neutral, you're going to make this more friendly to the conservative thought process, like you're going to do all of these things because we want to make sure this sells to the biggest audience possible, which is just not the impression that you got in the early days of Pixar, right? It's just like, it didn't feel like Disney had their thumb on the scale as hard as they did when it came to the storytelling of these movies. And it's what made them so impressive at the time, is you couldn't believe that I mean, Toy Story is about a man having an existential midlife crisis in a kid's movie, like for children.
Yes, it is. It is very much
like that's a wild idea, right? Like, and it felt like it feels like, Disney is doing everything they can to sand off the rough edges, and that's just not the point, right?
Yeah, it's very true. Pixar always felt like the one that was safe from the meddling. And I will say this is a hill that I will die on. I think that Cars 2 is the best Cars movie. You can come for me. You can make the comments. I get it.
3 is pretty solid. I think in terms of the original concept, I think 3 and 1 are phenomenal. I think 2 is a great movie. I just think that 2 does not have the same artistic aim, right? It's much more about expanding the universe. It's much more about the bits that they can do, with all the different types of cars and stuff all over the world. And it leans heavily on Mater and things like that. So I think it's a great movie. I just think that artistically it's not nearly as deep as the first one, being all about that love letter to the Americana of Route 66, right? And then the third one, which is just this gorgeous story about just racing in general, and the idea of the aging hero and stuff like that, which they kind of touch on in the first one, but since we've been with Lightning for 2 movies now, we get to see Lightning go through it, and it's a whole different. So I think 1 and 3 are really deep and meaningful. I think 2 is not so deep, but still fun.
I mean, 2 works for me. The reason why I like 2 is it builds out a world that I had a lot of questions about. 2 is the movie that, I needed after seeing the first Cars to be okay with the world of Cars.
Questions for you, though? It does for me.
No, because I'm fully. First of all, Weezer gets to sing. Oh shoot. They covered the song by the Cars. And I think it's super funny that in the Cars universe, the Cars don't exist, but a song by the Cars does, only it's performed by Weezer. That is that song, You Might Think I'm Crazy, is the song. When they first arrive in Tokyo, it plays. I love the Cars, right? Rick Ocasek, the whole steez of that band really works for me. But when I was watching that, and I'm like, why is Weezer doing this song? And I'm like, oh, but it's by the Cars. Do the Cars exist in the Cars universe? Those are the questions that I asked, the further questions I had after watching that movie. Yeah. But it kind of rectified itself. It was a closed loop set of questions. And then because that moment happened with the Weezer cover of a Cars song, I didn't let myself get too out of the pocket in terms of questions about how the world works. I know that is insane, but it is straight up, they tricked me with it. I understand. Yeah. It was mass hypnosis. And I don't think it worked on a lot of people. I have to be honest with you.
No. It was not. It was not as well received. Right? It really caught a lot of shit when it first came out. And it wasn't Pixar's first sequel, because Toy Story 2 had come out, and by all accounts,
Toy Story 3
was
had
their
come
number
out
one
too.
movie at that point.
Yeah,
but Toy Story 3 had come out. Yeah.
And I think that's how they did it.
They'd done sequels before,
right.
But this was kind of the one that felt like their heart wasn't in it, to be completely blunt about it. This one felt a little soulless compared to what they had done so far. No pun intended there either.
Right. No, I mean, I get it. I totally understand that. It's just I want to make sure that I do like Cars 2. It weirdly works for me, all of the things that are brought up in the film. But you're right. And I think that the reason why they don't have an argument against making another Cars movie is you just made a third Toy Story film. Now, is Toy Story 3 easily a top 3 Pixar film? Yeah. They put a lot into that movie. They take what is essentially a midlife crisis from the first one and turn it into just so much more going on about what it means to be alive and to, participate in the world.
And to age, like the idea that like aging out, which has always been a story in those, is like, you know, in the first one, Woody feels like he's being replaced. In the second one, he feels like he just belongs in a museum at this point. And in the third one, I mean, to be blunt about it, once again, he just accepts death.
Yes.
Like the third one is all about this acceptance of coming to the end of your life. Like you have lived a good life, you have helped all the people that you knew along and loved along the way, and you're ready to move on. And so like it's part of the reason why I'm struggling with 4 and 5 in the ways that I am, is that like 3 is such a good ending to what the whole concept of what Toy Story was. You know, 4 and 5 feel like fun movies, and you know I'm looking forward to 5, but it's just not going to be part of the same story, you know.
So Toy Story 4, I never saw a trailer for. At least I don't remember seeing a trailer for it. Like Toy Story 4 was something that I went to see because when I was like AMC A-list at the time, so I was going to see movies, and it's like, well, I've seen all the Pixar movies. This is just another Pixar movie to see. And I enjoyed my time with it. I think that it was interesting, but it did feel like, to bring up the fact that a lot of these later Pixar films probably would have been shorts before. It feels very reminiscent of the Toy Story shorts that we had gotten all along the way since '95 when Toy Story came along. It really does feel
there's straight up holiday classics now that are Toy Story, right? There's a Halloween one, Toy Story of Terror or something like that. What is the name of that?
Yeah, I think that's I don't know. I think it's Toy Story of Terror. But yeah, like there's so many like little shorts of it, and that's what 4 feels like. And that not for better or for ill. Seeing an actual trailer for Toy Story 5 prior to Hoppers yesterday, I was kind of like, I don't know how excited I am about this one. Like, I finally understood the way that people felt about Toy Story 4, because I finally experienced that, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, that whole, this feels a little unnecessary. I don't know how this connects to, like, the Toy Story that I saw when I was a lad. Like, it just feels so far removed, like you said, from what it was initially about. So that's just it. And we have seen a lot of controversial stuff with, I mean, historically Inside Out 2, the headline around that was they were told to make it less gay. And I gotta say, it still kind of felt like the gayest film that I've ever seen. And I do not mean that as a complaint. I mean that, like, it really feels like they told a very good story about somebody, like, going through that. Like, it felt like representation. Right. Yeah, like questioning or going through that stuff. Like, do I like these girls only because of what it can do for me as a hockey player, or is there a little bit something more there? Like, it really, like, I understand that when I say it, like, still felt really gay, it just felt disingenuous, that headline about they were told to make this less gay. And it's like, well, they certainly didn't listen. Like, if that's what they were told, they're like, thanks for the note, we got this though.
Yeah.
and
that ends up being the same story for Elio, you know, and that ends up being the same story for Hoppers is interesting because it's not a LGBT thing at that point. LGBTQ plus, you know, I'm not ignoring the rest of you. It's just my shorthand is from 1990. But like, it's not necessarily a story in that realm, but rather the environmental side of things and the business side of things. There's a lot of stuff about like the politics in the movie and the corporate politics in the movie that, you know, it doesn't make like corporations look good, but you know, there's definitely some moves in it to be a little bit same-sidesy in a way that I didn't love. But majority of it, I would say, was very pro-environment, right? Like, it was very, very pro, like, we need to pay attention to the world around us because we are all part of this thing together. Like, I love that. But at the end of the day, there was definitely some stuff going on that I was just like, yeah, this feels a little victim blamey at this point.
Yeah. So I didn't love Hoppers. That is where I'm going to say. My mother hated it. Like, I was very excited
Really?
that the whole family got out, and there was a moment in the movie where she said, I hate this movie. And then she said, as we got in the car, I don't think I, like, outright hated it, but just overall, like, I was expecting something else, and that was not what I got. And I'm like, I mean, I understand that. Like, I did not think the third act of Hoppers, like the break into 3, really changed what that movie was as far as what I thought the film was going to be. I still enjoyed my
this is
time
interesting
with
because
it.
you talk about not seeing any previews for Toy Story 4 and going to see
Yeah.
it. The only thing I've seen of Hoppers was I saw a poster and a 10-second clip about the Avatar joke, and that's about as much as I'd ever seen going into this movie. So I really didn't know much more than just like, okay, somehow humans put their brains in animals, and I am assuming we're going to learn about, treating animals
Yeah.
right, and
Yes.
and that is what I got. So from what I was expecting, it was kind of right on, but I also wasn't expecting much because I was not nearly as informed about this movie as I have been about other Pixar movies. So,
Well, I'll also say that I didn't go much deeper. The only thing that I ever saw is they did a really great trailer that kind of sums up the whole pond rules scene and this idea of like these are pond rules. So I thought that like it was going to be this girl, right? I can't think of her name. I just call her Tanaka because that's her last name, and I feel like a jerk about that I cannot remember this character's name at all. I was kind of hoping you'd fill it in. Mabel. Mabel is her name. Her name is Mabel. Her eyes are not hazel.
I was muted. Sorry, I was screaming Mabel over here.
Yeah, so Mabel, she doesn't seem to fit in with like human society, and I thought that the lesson she was going to learn through like the exposure with the animal kingdom, which she seemed to value over the human kingdom, was like how to do that. I did not expect spoilers for Hoppers, a film that released 2 days ago at the time that we are recording this. Just like gonna rip it all off. I didn't expect her to assassinate the insect queen and then like the animals decide we're gonna kill all the humans. I didn't expect the Bender bending Rodriguez story arc that happened in this movie.
The way in which death is not only accepted in this world, but like the emotional maturity that the animals, at least I will say, in this world put on death are a level of emotional like maturity that I think most people dream of. Some people may even assume they have and then find out very harshly that they do not. But like the ways in which the animals accept this, right? The whole pond rules concept was just like fascinating to me. Because then, yeah, it does become the kind of plot significant that she kills somebody. And specifically, she kills somebody in a moment that doesn't abide by the pond rules, right?
Yes.
Like if you dissect that scene, I don't know if that's the right word. But if you take that scene apart and think about like why are they mad about this when they have this ongoing rule? Well, it's because she does something in a moment that is just like not right. Like that's not how it's supposed to work. Also, on top of that, there is a little bit of classism going on, and I think that there's something to be said about that too. Yeah. But like the way that death is such a part of this world and then thus a part of the plot of this story. And it's not even like she's the only wild kill in this movie, because then there's just all of this stuff about like squishing and about how they're gonna kill all the humans. It's crazy how much this movie is just like, no, death is a real consequence in this world, but also like, it's just a part of life. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, the really interesting thing is that the pond rule about death, the one that we're referring to, is that if you gotta eat, eat. And if something catches you, you're its fucking food, right? Like, it's not about, like, understand that we are all part of a connected ecosystem and this whole thing. But the death is not, like, a premeditated death sort of thing. It's not one of these things where, like, Gary the bear over there is sitting like, one day I'm gonna eat Scott. Like, Gary is not obsessed with it. It is that Gary is hungry one day and Scott happens to be the poor schmuck who walks by, right? That's the
Right.
salmon I
Right.
catch that day. There doesn't seem to be any premeditation to it. It is very, I'm hungry, I have to eat. Scott's the salmon I caught today. Like, and there you go. So the nuance that really does work about that scene where Mabel assassinates the insect queen, voiced by Meryl Streep, which is just wonderful, is that it's also not premeditated. It is very much an in-the-moment reactionary thing. It almost looks like an accident, right? Like she's trying to calm her down and she accidentally catches her between her paws. Like it doesn't seem malicious or anything like that, and it does seem an of the moment thing, but that emotional maturity, that understanding of like when death has to happen in our chain, it's still like that death did not need to happen. There was no reason for her to die there.
She breaks a taboo.
Yeah. And it's very, and that pushes it forward. And you're not wrong about the class stuff and all that other things. I think the part of Hoppers that doesn't jive with me is it's paced really weird. It was a really long hour and 45 minutes. And that kind of bummed me out because there was a time where I was lost in the world. And then, like, suddenly I was, like, painfully aware that I was still watching a movie. And I know that's going to vary for everybody. But, like, I think it's because the things that I felt should be focused on suddenly shifted out of focus. Like, using sound to clear a habitat so that you can build there is such an interesting concept to me that, like, it suddenly just became a plot device, though. Like that, like,
I mean, it's a known tactic by corporations
yeah.
that is made extremely illegal by many laws and rules in
Yes.
this country, dating all the way back to fucking Theodore Roosevelt. You know, like,
yes.
One of the things that I think is always really funny is, or maybe it's FDR, but
I think it's Teddy, though. I think you're right about that.
Oh, right, he is Teddy. Yeah. Yeah, but the ways in which, as a, like, real conservative, he was like, hey, we owe it to this country to make sure we keep parts of it, you know, like, alive and beautiful and stuff like that. And now to think about what the attitudes towards that are today, like, that's a complex concept to wrap your head around. But like, you know, we're talking about these kinds of rules that have been around for, at this point, almost a century, about this idea that, like, we're going to put laws in place that say, hey, you can't touch this area, you can't behave in this way because it's important to the environment that they stay this way. And, like, what they're doing with that stuff is a unfortunate tactic that we know we've seen happen, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're pretty present and plot significant for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, but they only ever become, like, objects. Like, there's never any, like, real confrontation about it. Like, I don't know, like, I'm just like, this is the thing. Like, the second she sees that tree, and I'm like, I was mad in the theater. I was like angry because, like, I'm a sound guy, right? So to see sound weaponized, and for a fucking beltway of all things, like, that's the other thing, is it just felt like a little bit not prescient enough as to what we're doing to the environment. Like, we're not really knocking down areas to put up highways anymore. That's a very, like, outdated sort of concept where, like, AI is a big deal, right? That AI will move into towns and suck up all their power and electricity. That is something. And I know that this film has probably been in work since before AI was the threat that we now see it as to our environment.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that in a state that has consistent major highway construction still going on, and also a state that is very much in love with its environment, it is not an unheard of conversation out here to talk about, like, well, you know, the reason we don't run cars that way is because that's where, like, the antelope live and that sort of shit.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna
so, like, it's not completely unheard of out here to hear that. I will say that it's not, like, the number one environmental factor that comes to mind, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It just felt like that felt like such an outdated sort of concept. Like when you watch old shows and it's like they're gonna do this and it's like, well, that we now know that that's not a problem what they're doing, or we now know that like they're not gonna do that because it's gonna be stopped well before it actually happens. We're gonna learn that lesson.
But,
I don't know.
The two things that I'll say to this is that like I said before, this is not a I think part of the reason that it worked for me is that this is not something so crazy that it's out of the realm of possibility, right? It's not AI coming in and taking over a town and ruining their water supply, which hopefully, fingers crossed, we never get to that point. But we're quickly getting to that point. But more about this thing that like is a more vague universal experience. A corporation of some kind or a government official of some kind has deemed that this area is set to be used in a way that is harmful to the environment. Like, that's it. Just like baseline. We all get that. We've all seen that happen. True. So then like, so
I guess
in a
highway
way,
just
I'm
feels
glad
outdated.
that it is a little bit more of a less specific trope than what it is. But the other thing is that I think this also speaks to a lot of the running commentary right now about how Disney really sanitized a lot of what this movie could have been. Because A, they're a big corporation. They don't want to make the corporations the ultimate bad guys all the time. And B, like, they're playing nice with the idea of the government right now is just kind of every major company's. Yeah. It's in their best interest to do so. Let me put it that way. I don't agree with it. I don't want it to be happening. But from a business perspective, why the fuck wouldn't they be catering to like the audience, to their president king right now, to say like, oh no, the government can work with the people to make these things happen. It's just like, it's a little like finger waggy being like, now, don't go too far. Make sure you're actually talking to the citizens. But like, at the end of the day, no, like I wanted the main villain to be the mayor. I wanted the main like issue to be that he was actually super corrupt, even though he was beloved by all. But no, it's just about him being misled, right?
Yeah.
Like the moment for me that you talk about a moment where you suddenly started to kind of feel like you didn't love this movie, right? The moment for me that almost hit like that was the moment where they're showing the mayor starting his day. And he starts off his day so jovially to the point where he like makes pancakes for his aging mother and like waves to everybody, and in a weird way they kind of emulate the ways in which he is a lot like George, in that like he says hi to everybody, but distinctly different than George, and another character in the movie. I'm just
you didn't just throw that name out. Yeah, that's the king of the mammals. That's the mammal king. To make him
distinctly different than King George, he noticeably doesn't know anybody's name.
Right.
He's just being like, hey, you, hi there. Like, whereas like King George was always just like, hi, Pete, hi, Sam, hi. Like he knew everybody. So it was this really interesting commentary on like who he is, but also at the same time, they really are starting to give him an out by showing that he is nice. He is friendly. He's just a little ignorant, which is just like, that's such a weak way to frame him. And then eventually, 10 minutes later, he's no longer even the villain of the movie.
I mean, yeah, they take that whole moment to humanize him so that he can have like a hero turn in the third act. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, that's okay. I get it. But like, I wish the secondary antagonist had not been the Titus, the Insect Queen's successor. So I guess the new Insect King. But I
don't know, man. Fucking Franco.
Great. Dave Franco fucking nailed it. I'm so like, I've seen so many Dave Franco movies lately. Love that guy. But no, in the fact of that, just I wish that there was someone misleading the mayor. Right? Like if that's gonna be the way that we go with it, where like he eventually becomes a hero, if there was somebody being like, either you like, the Beltway was for him. The Beltway was his legacy. We didn't get to see anyone in the shadows being like, you want to get reelected, you're going to need money, so let us build this Beltway. Let us, pollute this glade. There was no shadowy figure in the distance that was rewarding him for his actions. And I guess not every story needs that, but then it becomes harder to be like, like the level that he goes to, right? Because they tear down the one fake tree that is emitting like sonic waves to make the animals run away. And then they come back and they put up like 10 more of them. Those are like $10,000 each. Fake trees are not cheap. I learned that from Daddy's Home too. I hate myself
as
for
the
the
movie
words
itself,
that I just said.
well, but as the movie itself tells us, also they become extremely dangerous. I mean, one alone is dangerous. Like let's not ignore that, right? 10 is like that is a true environmental terrorism there. Like that is what that is. You are that is the kind of shit that we would pull in a country we are at war with in order to like fuck up their food supply. Like we would like the kind of shit the war that he wages on nature in the first 2/3 of this movie is like unforgivable, which is what makes the third act turn for him harder to believe, right? And like I'm with you on that, but like at the end of the day, I do think that where this movie feels a little 60-40, it probably more like 90-10 back there. like some humans do care, so like not all humans are bad, but the majority of humans are kind of the fucking worst, is where I feel like this movie wanted to land, which is what the beginning of the movie really feels like it's aiming for. So this like move in the back half to suddenly be like, no, now calm down. Put those environmental pitchforks away, folks. Like, we can all figure this out together. And it's like, fuck that. We've been trying that for a century now, and it has not been happening.
I will also talk about the fact that they gloss over how they figure it out together. There's a 2 to 3 year time jump from we're going to figure out a solution to this. And it is not shown via montage over the credits, like something like WALL-E, which, like, where they come back to Earth in WALL-E, and they're like, you're fucked. But then we see how the people on that ship rebuild society on Earth. And yes, it's just in little vignettes in the credits, but we get to see it. It's like they realized that they had put themselves into such a corner that, like, we're just gonna hand wave it away. Mabel's now graduating, and we know she's 19, so that is why she was either a senior or a sophomore or a freshman at the start of this movie, and then we see her graduation day, and it's like, okay, so we gloss over it, and we see that moment where she goes. Also, I mean, maybe it's because I've spent a lot of time with academia, and I know you have too. I cannot believe that a college would be like, you're stopping this. We're stopping the funding on Hopper technology. Like, that whole lab is disabled. Like, come on. The fact that they can't develop any more of those translation earbuds is crazy to me.
I think the bigger thing is that she says very specifically that it proves to be like dangerous, and probably more specifically financially dangerous. Because I cannot imagine that the school felt that they could financially insure that kind of shit, right?
The insurance is always the issue.
The bigger thing, right? The bigger thing to me was I couldn't believe that somebody else hadn't stepped in. Like, we don't see like a government agency of some kind coming to them and being like, you've lost all of your funding, so how about we cut you this nice check and you give us all of your research? Like, that is more likely what would happen in a lot of these situations. So I do think that they would definitely get fired from whatever it was, or have the program shut down at the university. But the fact that no other benefactor would step in and be like, hey, like, this is pretty badass technology that we shouldn't lose and definitely shouldn't let other countries get a hold of. So like I feel like that would have been the more likely ending.
Where was Frozone in an eye patch?
Good, like, they're shutting us down, so we're moving on.
Yeah, but where was Frozone in an eye patch? Stop talking! No, I'm kidding. Where was Frozone in an eye patch offering the Avengers Initiative? That's what we needed. That's what this movie was missing. I love you. I'm sorry I yelled at you, Chin. I just was trying to get my stupid Frozone in an eye patch joke out. And every time I thought you gave me the opportunity, you had another thing there. But you're not wrong. That just felt like weirdly like, you're going to come work for me. But then she goes and sees the king, and like, that moment is nice. That final moment where they're in the glade where she had spent all the time with her grandmother. I mean, I guess the other thing that kind of bummed me out about this movie was just the Pixar-ness of it. if that makes sense. Lot of Pixar tropes in this one. With, like, the death of the grandmother, the, like, estrangement from her parents. Like that whole scene where they're like, you really want to do this? And she's like, well, grandma kind of needs someone to help take care of her. Is like, yeah, like, she's not just being rebellious. She is legitimately like, grandma's old and someone needs to help her out. I can't, like, in good conscience, move to the other side of the country with you.
I mean, look, as somebody that has had some family drama in the past that has revolved around something kind of similar to that, it's this idea, though, where she talks about in the end how it feels like nobody else seems to give a shit about the stuff she cares about. Right. She cares about these things. Why doesn't anybody else? And this is a perfect example. Like, she cared enough about her grandmother to not move across the country. Like, why doesn't the rest of her family feel the same way? It's why she feels so alienated from them.
Yeah.
And, like, I can't say that I have never felt that before. I have personally also had those kinds of feelings.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's, I don't know. I kind of have those feelings, but I'm like, but they don't bother me, which is weird. Like, I know that says a lot about my psyche, and let's not turn this into therapy for Devin, but, like, a lot of people, like, they don't like to be alone, and I'm like, but I've, like, found ways to be alone, and I kind of like it. Like, sometimes I don't want to be around people. And I know that might sound crazy to some people, but I don't know. Sometimes,
specifically some doctors out there, but no, I mean, you know, it is a feeling that most people have, this idea that, like, especially right now, that you have this thought in your head about saving the glade, and it seems really important. Why doesn't it seem important to anybody else? And then you start to question things. Does that mean that I'm wrong? Does that mean there's something wrong with me? Or does it mean that there's some larger issue in society that's unfixable? That's a terrifying thought. And it can really make you spiral. And I really appreciated the way that this movie really kind of captured, especially being 19 and that being where you're at. So you do stupid and rash things, and there are consequences. Sometimes consequences that will never be made up for, you know, like, completely unforgivable. Like, we talk lightly about the fact that she straight up murders somebody in this movie, but, like, it is a huge plot point and a huge significant part of her character, like, arc and realization of, like, what she is actually doing to other people. She literally harms someone to the point of they are no longer here to apologize to. Like, and it causes all sorts of issues amongst the animals, and then eventually amongst the humans, right? Like, it's I really, really did enjoy the way that this movie felt like good old-fashioned Pixar, in that it was trying to talk about these bigger kind of meta emotional things while also having this very clear example in front of you of like a real thing you might actually deal with, right? And that is something that I think is not necessarily there in movies like Cars 2, right? Just to go back to an example, fine. To talk about why a movie may or may not feel like it really is doing the Pixar thing. This movie feels like it's doing the Pixar thing, and maybe that's why I enjoyed it as much as I did. But yeah,
no, I like it. I get that. I guess the two last things I don't want to say on it, because we have other things that we talk about. I didn't think that, like, I like that you're like, oh, I don't think it's going to be that long a conversation, but I saw Hoppers.
Well, I honestly
and then it's
didn't
an
know
hour on the
it.
other
So,
side.
like, part
okay,
of it was,
gotcha.
I thought, just going to be me saying that I saw it and I liked it and moving on. But, yeah.
No. I mean, I've been complicated thoughts about Hoppers since I saw it about 24 hours ago. I think further systemically, the fact that this movie does feel like old Pixar, but we don't treat children the way we treated them 30 years ago. Like, it's weird to say that there's been more of an infantilization of children, but we do, like, kind of protect them. Like, I think about riding my bike around all of Coventry when I was 10 years old, and how nowadays that doesn't happen. I think about how I walked to my bus stop beginning when I was like 11 years old. I would walk to my bus stop, and now there is a line of cars at what was my bus stop of parents waiting for their kids to get picked up by the bus. Like, there's that thing. So it's like Toy Story has very adult themes, but it still feels like a movie made for children. Hopper has a lot of adult themes, and I struggle to look at it as a film that is made for children, made for modern children.
This is going to be a pure anecdote. Like, this is completely anecdotal. This is not, but as I sat at this movie yesterday, and there were a smattering of people. I went to a 1:00 in the afternoon showing, 2:00 in the afternoon showing. So on a Saturday. So I expected there to be more than there was, but there was definitely people there. It wasn't empty. Sitting in my row was a family with a young boy that this was clearly not the first time they had seen it. And like he was questioning things about like the bad people in the movie, why were they doing this and stuff, but he was also quoting things before they even came out. It was a kid that clearly was into this.
Good.
And even in the more emotional parts was like sad, but not like losing his shit in a weird way. It was like, I was like, oh man, maybe kids are just more emotionally mature about death than I realize, or maybe it's because of movies like this that they are. So I had a pure experience with a young child in the audience of this movie who had a hell of a time. So like, awesome. I think there's something there. Also, when I was a kid, King George would be my jam. I'm just going to put that out there.
King George is my jam as an adult. You kidding me? Bobby Moynihan is a fucking beaver with a little crown? Sign me the fuck up, Sejin. But I guess, so anecdotally, there were multiple children in our viewing who were like screaming that they wanted to go home. Like they were into it, and then like it got like too scary or things like that. And it's just like, I wasn't expecting that. Like it was something that surprised me to like hear that. But then also anecdotally, Dale in the restroom after the movie hears a little girl going off about how much she loved the movie. So like it's all sort of a general mishmash. I just feel like looking at a film like Hopper's now, it's actually something that I'm sort of fearful of, is that this is a loaded statement that I'm about to make. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it's something that I hear a lot specifically about our generation. And that is that millennials really represent an arrested sort of development. And so rather than like aging out of the things we liked when we were younger, we aged the things that we liked up with us. And then it becomes this sort of fear that like our Pixar movies now no longer for children. And that's just I'm just saying, like as an observation, that's something that I wondered after seeing this film particularly. I didn't feel that way after Elio. I did not feel that way after Inside Out. Felt that way a little bit about Elemental. I liked Elemental, but the stereotypes are like the kind of stereotypes I don't think kids today are exposed to. Like they kind of felt more for the older people in the audience. So I just don't know. Like that's the thing. So I'm really, it makes me happy to hear that you had that experience, that those experiences are happening. And I want to imagine, I want to believe that those experiences are the majority and my experiences are the minority. But having experienced them, it becomes difficult to not let it color my experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I actually am more interested in the idea of, were they ever really like these movies? One of the things that always made Pixar stand out was the fact that they were for everybody. They're for not just for the kids, but also mom and dad. And slowly over time, they've become more and more and more like, maybe, they always wanted to be making these kinds of movies for an adult audience. And, the only way to make that happen, as we know, is to also make it for kids. But I kind of love the idea that they're proving that animation doesn't have to just be a children's medium. And you can call that Arrested Development if you want, but like I think that like
it's what other people
there's merit
say
in exploring the idea.
Yeah. Like I said, it's what other people refer to it as. It's something I hear a lot. I don't think it's necessarily true. But, you look at, like, the toy market. And, like, kids don't buy... that's what Toy Story 5 is about, right? Is that kids are care more about their electronic devices than playing with toys. In fact, like, as much as the Toy Story 5 trailer doesn't jive with me, I was in tears when we got to see Bonnie's, like, imagination as she played with the toys. Like, it was something that, like, we've never gotten to see sort of that Muppet Babies, Rugrats view of the imagination. Woody being the sheriff with Andy, like, it wasn't, very rarely did it take on, like, an otherworldly sort of quality, you know? But in that, I imagine you saw the trailer for Toy Story 5 before Hoppers, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm making an assumption here. Like, it was sort of like that glittery sort of like diddle-the-doo from Wayne's World sort of thing, where, like, clearly we're in a dream space while she's having this wedding between these characters. And then to see her lose that, like, sort of imagination making her own fun when she's handed the iPad, like, stand-in for it, the lily pad, like, that broke my heart, because, like, my imagination is something that I value so much in this world.
Yeah, I know. It all starts to feel a little like Sunset Boulevard, like, oh, I miss old Hollywood, and it's just like, well, like, the new thing is not going to be the end. It's just going to be something new, you know. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't ask these questions. Of course we should, but also we shouldn't be offended by the existence of, like, these, like, new ways of exploring and play and stuff.
Yes, obviously.
Because the second you do that, the second you start going that route, you start talking about making rules about what can and can't be done. And there's no fucking better way to make sure that something stands the test of time than to exile or ban it in some way.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You know, I use the word womps to this day because of that episode of Recess, where they outlawed the word womps, of all things. Sorry. I mean, last thing on Hoppers, and then, God, we had other things we were going to talk about. I loved the anger issues that Mabel had. I just wish that maybe the resolution had been a little clearer. Like, because, like, she still kind of had anger issues at the end of the movie. Like, it doesn't feel like they were ever truly addressed. Like, her being alone, like, I get why she was angry. But as somebody who's experienced anger issues, I'm like, a little bit more for that representation would have worked for me if I were a kid seeing this. Like, but again, who knows what they pulled back on for this movie? Legitimately, since we know that they were, like, the rumor is that they were told to pull back on the anti-consumerism, pro-environment message that this movie has, which, like, sounds like fucking such bullshit when you consider how much of a pro-environmental message is in this movie, and also how muddied it gets because kind of the animals take a weird, like, anti-environment sort of thing, or at least anti-environmental balance sort of stance near the end of it. Like, we're all in this together.
I think they do a good job showing that is not something they all believe.
Definitely.
But rather maybe one or two specific individuals.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, though. Yeah, for sure. It definitely gets muddied.
It gets a little bit muddied. And that's always just like a fear with, well, we'll talk about something that happened in a TED episode, possibly. Maybe not this week, but something that, like, the message joke at the end of the 7th episode of TED Season 2, I'm like, ooh, that muddied what was a pretty good lesson that this episode could have imparted onto people. And I know that it's better to go for the punchline than, like, the moral lesson. But some people are only going to hear the punchline. And that can be dangerous, as we discuss all the time on this show, actually. But yeah, so, like, I now that I think about it, now that we've had this discussion, there being some corporation behind the mayor's actions, that not being a plot point, I could totally see that be one of the things that they were told to, like, whoa, the Dalt Wisney Company is the one who wants to build the Beltway. We're going to have to pare that back. Maybe the mayor just wants to build it on his own. All right. Other things to talk about. I saw Scream 7. I'm going to give people another week to see Scream 7 before I talk any spoilers about it on the show. I really enjoyed it. Apparently people are not enjoying it, and I don't know how, if you're a fan of that franchise, you could not like the 7th movie. That's going to be my quick spoiler-free review of Scream 7.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard one thing one way or the other about it yet, so I'll have to ask some of my more horror-centric friends, because they were very excited about it, so I just haven't really touched base with them since.
You want to talk the politics behind it, and like erasing characters and bringing back Nev Campbell, that's a whole other kettle of fish. Like, I get those people who are like your brother, chief among, like, who I don't really love, like, what's behind the scenes on this film to make this film happen. Yeah. Like, and I get that. I mean, I agree.
Especially as somebody who has fallen in love with Michelle Barrera over the last year or two from various projects that she's done since Scream. Like to know what had gone down with her. And then, I also very much like Jenny Ortega right now, and the ways in which I'm very kind of impressed by the ways in which she stood by a coworker like that, and like walked away from a franchise that, like, people can call her, it has been thrown around that she maybe is being a little cocksure about her own, like, career at the moment by saying, I'm going to walk away from this huge franchise because of this personal belief of mine. But I think that that's what people should do. So like, it's really weird to hear people talk about, like, well, she's too young, she's so young, and she doesn't have enough behind her to be really acting like this. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Who are you referring to, Jenna Ortega or Melissa Barrera?
Jenna Ortega. Yeah. No, Jenna Ortega. Because Barrera, what happened with her is, I've got so many opinions and feelings about, but at the end of the day, she said one thing, the studio was like, nope, and got her out, and so that happened. That sucks, and there's definitely something to be said there. Mm-hmm. But what Ortega did was Ortega looked at that and said, well, then I'm not sticking around, and also walked away. And I think that was an awesome move on her part. Like, I'm excited to see where her career really goes over the next few years, where she's not doing the Scream Queen dark gothy thing. Like, I'm curious to see what else we see from her, because between Wednesday and Scream, I don't know too much else that and Beetlejuice, right? I don't know too much else that I could point to her in just yet. I'm sure there are other things, but like, I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I wanted to confirm which one we were talking about is that, like, for someone like Jenna Ortega, the unfortunate thing is that she is in the better position to take that stand. It's not that, but like, by taking that stand, she also severed her ties with Tim Burton, because there's going to be a third season of Wednesday. There's going to be a third Beetlejuice film, and she is already locked in for both of those. Like, right. It's the unfortunate, like, the sad thing about it is that, as you say that she's young and like what she's doing in their career, she's at a point where like she has the ability to do it. And the saddest thing is that there are a lot of people who do not have that sort of security to be able to make the tough stands that we wish we saw more in this world. And I'm not even just talking like in Hollywood. I'm talking like in general, right? Like,
but that's why it's important that you take the stand when you can, right?
Yes.
Like, when you're in the privileged position to be able to do a thing, you gotta do it.
You have to do
it. Because if not, then you're complicit in it happening, then in the bullshit, right? Like, if you're not putting a stop to it, if you're not saying, hey, this is not right, if you're not calling it out, then you're inherently implicit in it continuing. Like,
yes. Who would have thought the term inherently implicit in it continuing would come up in this episode of the same report? It's true, though. It is very true.
Some people disagree with that concept, again, that philosophy, as it were. But that's definitely where I fall as a human. I don't know.
No, yeah. It's when you're at the ability to take the stand, to do the tough thing, to make the choice that is better globally rather than personally. Like, yeah, you should do it. And the unfortunate thing is that, like, you also should be able to make the better choice globally than personally at any time in your life, but we are just living in a system that does not allow for that to be the choice.
Which is fucking wild,
crazy.
because we talk about the ways in which we were raised and the ways in which it shaped us. Every fucking children's show ever taught us to make sure to stand up for what's right, and when we saw something bad happening to somebody in a position that couldn't defend themselves, for you to step, like, everything taught us to be this way. So then for society to turn around and be like, well, no, we didn't really mean it, like, it was just a pipe dream that we just fed kids just so that you'd shut up, sucks. That sucks.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the most formulative moments in my life was when the vice principal, who was leaving, it was his last day at my high school, and I wound up in his office because I had done something to break the rules, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "This is my last day, so I have to tell you this because you need to know this. What you did on a humanity level was the right thing to do. The only problem is, from a student, like, faculty sort of thing, you have to be punished for it. But don't let this punishment dissuade you from doing the thing that as a human is the right thing to do." And that honestly, that has shaped who I am as an adult. Something that was said to me when I was 17 years old by somebody who would not have to suffer the consequences of saying that to me. Let's just be completely honest. Dr. Morano was not going to be there for the remainder of my senior year, where I fully embraced the idea of, if what I'm doing is right as a human, it doesn't matter if it breaks the rules of this school. Straight up. But
throw myself more into the well of woke out there, just so that everybody really knows where I come from. Like, this is literally like the one of the 10 questions I asked myself that made me like leave the church type shit. Like, that's like this kind of idea of, like, doing what's right versus doing what the letter of the law says, like that kind of conversation. Because there is straight up just some moments that I was asking some questions and not getting satisfactory answers to when I was a wee lad sitting in a Catholic church.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, let's like talk about the trajectory of me. Within 6 months of that discussion, I was going to Bible studies and getting into arguments with religious leaders about hypocrisy that they were preaching. Right? Yeah. Like, I hate to tell you guys, but we're covering X-Men: The Last Stand. I'm probably going to tell that story again of what I was doing an hour before I got to see probably not the worst X-Men movie, because there's been some other bad ones, but at the time. Good times. All right. You know what? Now that I brought up the X-Men, why don't we talk about some mutants that we have been edging our audience on for the entire month of February, kind of.
Yeah, really.
So, all right. Obviously, we like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at the Say Report. If that's not
we need like a friggin' we need like a what do you call it? A bumper now. Like, every time we get into TMNT talk, that something plays. Like, that's like Devin Siege and Turtle Power.
Yeah, Devin Siege and Turtle Power. I'll whip something up, but we like them here, right? I mean, and it comes out in all sorts of ways. And the ways that it is representing itself primarily in 2026, I know we talked a little bit about Splintered Fate, is that in the wake of, when did the IDW come to an end? Was it last year? I'm looking that up. Sorry. TMNT.
They still had the old logo, I think, on the end of the IDW ones, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was 2024. January 11th, 2024 is when the final... so comics are weird, right? Not to be that guy. I'm really breaking new ground by saying comics are weird. But there's this interesting thing. Comics have existed for almost 100 years at this point. And one of the reasons that comics are able to persist is that comic companies are not afraid to, reboot their entire universe.
Yeah.
And the ninja.
No, look, when I first got into comics, it was because I've talked about this I think before. Hellboy was the first character I got into, and I was so blown away after reading a bunch of Mignola stuff to then turn around and see other people write them, and actually my favorite writer becoming Christopher Golden, who's actually I love his work. He actually ended up working on the latest movie. I think I talked about it when we discussed that film. But I love Christopher Golden's Hellboy stuff. Like it's some of my favorite like fantasy, like what is it called, like neo-gothic like fantasy or whatever it falls into. But like it's and I was just so impressed that like other artists get to do this, not knowing that that was like the bread and butter of the comic industry, is that somebody comes along, creates a thing. Unfortunately, they don't actually own that thing in most cases, but even in the cases when they do, that somebody else comes along and tries something different with it, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it becomes the canon for that character in a way that kind of erases some stuff beforehand. A simple version of that is Batman with a gun, right? Like
exactly, yes.
Like a non-controversial version of that is Batman with a gun.
Yeah. So it's a big thing. And as much as we've seen like flashpoints or one more days to like reboot like Marvel and DC continuity, that's also existed in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The first volume that started in 1984 went all the way until August 93 and culminates in 62 issues. 30 of those are guest issues that do not tie into the larger story, right? But that's the thing, right? So that's your first volume. And that's 62. The second volume is only 13 issues. The third is, I think, 28, and the fourth ends up being 28. Although they've since released an issue 29, 30, 31, and 32 through like some of the weird technicalities that existed in the Viacom deal when Viacom took over the Ninja Turtles license in 2011. Peter Laird still retained the rights to publish comics in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles continuity, and so 31 and 32 were part of that. But like all four of those issues were $10 comic books. And then the Archie comics, when Archie did that, they went on for 72. So IDW comes in 2011 when Viacom purchases it. They start doing their Ninja Turtle story. They go for 150 issues. That's more than double the most amount of issues that had ever existed in a Ninja Turtles like continuity ever. After 150 issues, and you know what? Like, that's a little disingenuous because there was a pretty big shift in issue 100 when the mutagen bomb was dropped, and Sophie Campbell became the main like story person behind it. Like, there's a bit of a shift there. But after 150 issues, IDW said, you know what? We need to reboot this. There's just too much lore. We're expecting our readers to know too much to fully understand this. So they go with the reboot strategy that, as we have said, has served comics pretty much since the beginning, right? Like Superman as a character, it's not so much that he has every power. It's that whenever he came up against something he couldn't best, he suddenly developed that power. Right?
Yeah. I mean, look, man, you're talking to somebody that is like fucking waist deep in absolute Batman right now, and it's like it's a little controversial. There are some people out there that don't love what's happening, but also like I think it's really cool as an old school Batman fan to see some fresh ideas in the world, Oh, and I found out this week that Method Man agrees with me, so fuck y'all.
That's Sejin. As much as I just need to be happy with myself at the end of the night, Sejin always said in a text to Method Man, like, did I do good today, Meth? And he goes, yeah. Sorry. That was just too good to not capitalize on. So they've started a whole new continuity, still with the Turtles, but they've made some strides for it. And then because eventually you're going to have those people complaining about what about the other stuff, why it's not there. They come up with something like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Battle Nexus Limited Series. It's a 5-issue series that I don't think it's necessarily trying to reconcile the entire multiverse of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it is certainly trying to be like, hey, remember that the Ninja Turtles are not just the 1987 series. Remember that
it's not to reconcile, but it's to recognize, right?
Yes.
Like you remember that this stuff is out there, because like there's stuff in that is good. That is not just doesn't fit into the IDW stuff, or doesn't fit into the Nickelodeon stuff, or doesn't fit into the
Yes. And this was, oh God, the Battle Nexus is something that has existed since like the 4th or 5th issue of this series. The 4th issue is when they're transmatted to the Triceraton homeworld, where the Battle Nexus like initially existed as just gladiatorial combat. I don't know if it's named the Battle Nexus until the 5th issue, but it's right in there. It's right in Volume 1 of Mirage, issue 4 and 5. They introduced the concept of the Battle Nexus. The Battle Nexus next gets its big kick in the ass in terms of like, this is the thing that we want to focus on in the 2003 series, which had Peter Laird as like a creative consultant, and he really wanted it to be an adaptation of the Mirage comic books. Less about pizza and puns, more about the seriousness of what it means to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. God, it's so weird to think that like this was a parody of Daredevil when it started, Seijin.
But I think it's a parody of comics in general at this point.
At this point,
and that includes all of the rebootingness and all of the Battle Nexus and the multiverse and the crossover event that we're talking about.
Yeah. And you know what? Also along the way, they do stump wrestling and Archie, which kind of talks about the Battle Nexus. They certainly touch on like it being a cross-dimensional sort of battle space for people to wrestle. Right, because that whole thing is about WWE. Like Stump is Donald Trump. Like that's why he's called Stump. Like, which is just an unfortunate thing that exists, right? Though it is satire about the man in the early 90s. So take it for what it is. But now the Battle Nexus, this whole thing is kind of this big crossover event with your IDW Turtles front and center. So, Seijin, I don't know how much you know about, like, the various universes of the Ninja Turtles. How did this comic strike you? Like, how did you feel about this endeavor that the Battle Nexus represents? Are you there? Did I lose you? Seijin?
Oop, nope, I was muted once again. Man, I put this cough button here, and I'm usually pretty good at undoing it, but sorry.
It's okay.
Better than me hacking in your ear, though. I promise.
I do appreciate that.
No, I really enjoyed it. Like, as somebody that like does not have the deepest of knowledge, like there were things I recognized, things I got the feeling I should recognize, but I didn't. But all in all, it seemed really good. I also really liked the way that it respected the differences between the versions. There's always a risk when you're doing these kinds of crossover moments that somebody starts acting a little out of character because they're being written by somebody they aren't usually written by, or they're being drawn by, in this case, somebody they're not usually drawn by. So like something is there that doesn't seem to really kind of jive with what you know about the character. But what they chose to do in this, it felt like, was to much more let everybody just still kind of exist in their own world. So certain characters speak a certain way, where other characters speak a different way, and like they don't change their speech patterns once they meet each other. Like they still continue talking in the ways that they talk, and sometimes that leads to miscommunication or people being frustrated or people, like that kind of thing. like it's funny that you talk about the about Leard and like not wanting it to be so punny and stuff, and brings it back to that, right? Because I think the best fucking joke, the best pun in the whole series is the moment where they talk about the black and white Shredder, and they're just like, there's something about him, he's like an illusion or a mirage.
Yes.
And that got a laugh out of me. That got a laugh out of me. Like, so I think it's a good, I mean, I think it was a lot of fucking fun. I also love the little tidbits here and there where it's pointing to shit, you know, a la like Marvel Comics, like go buy more issues of comics, please, but like read issue 62 to see how Deadpool has time to travel, you know, like that kind of shit. Like when they're talking about the Bebop and Rocksteady world and pointing out that like, we didn't make this up for this. This is a real fucking thing that's in the continuity.
Rocksteady and Bebop Destroy the Universe it's only 3 issues long, and honestly, it couldn't have gone any longer than 3 issues, because they just throw it all in there. All bets are off by the 3rd issue. In terms of, I think about that C-Lab episode where they keep like creating time parodies of themselves. They basically end up doing that with Bebop and Rocksteady.
It's the end of it's a play on the end of Bill and Ted, right? Bill and Ted 2 specifically, Bogus Journey,
right?
Where they like, there's the evil us's, and then they keep going back in time, and
then the good evil us's, and then the old us's with the kids, and like it is. It's a whole idea of just like with time travel, essentially things could get real messy real fast, and then give that to 2 guys who are just raging ids without any like control over themselves. You know what? The
proving once again that Rick and Morty isn't as original as everybody thinks it is. Right. But anyway,
what are you gonna do? The saddest thing that happened about that is the IDW like toys. McFarlane does them. They call them page punchers. And I was watching somebody talk about. There's this big fear that now that Playmates no longer has the Turtle license beginning in 2027, that they're going to, which I didn't know. Some people didn't know that. Like I did that thing with Zach, which is still not available. Otherwise, I'd be pimping it here. And he was not aware at the time that Playmates is losing the Ninja Turtles license at the end of 2026. Like, it was very funny to get a call from him 2 days later. It's like, Playmates is losing the Ninja Turtles. And the big fear is that now that it's not going to be Playmates, they're really going to close the borders. Mattel will close the borders to be the only game in town to get Ninja Turtles figures. Which I kind of understand why they would want to do that. There are so many companies that are doing so many different versions of the Turtles. Like, I get it. Like, you want to control that brand if you have the master license. Playmates couldn't keep up with the demand anymore, so that's why they did whatever. So McFarlane does specifically IDW stuff, and I was watching like people talk about the Mattel thing, and they're like, the Bebop and Rocksteady are cool, but like McFarlane just invented those, and I'm just like, that hurts my heart. Like, they're called page punchers because they're specifically from comic books. The figures come with comic books, either full books or representations of the books that they're from. And what? Like, to think that, and that all comes from NECA creating what would have been Jim Henson versions of Bebop and Rocksteady had they wound up in the movies. Like, NECA did concept art for that people hated. Bebop kind of looked like he was played by Paul Giamatti, which was the one thing that I can compliment them about. I would have loved the Paul Giamatti Bebop in like 1992. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, see, I'm looking this up right now. Sorry, keep going.
But like, for them to say that, like, yeah, those Bebop and Rocksteadies don't exist in any sort of form, but it's like, dude, not only do they exist to a point where there's an entire universe that is populated by only them. And that's like one of the things. So, did you see Paul Giamatti Bebop?
Oh no, I'm laughing at what I have to search to find this. Bebop, Rocksteady, concept art.
Yeah, I would throw NECA in there. And
NECA is definitely in at the front of it, yeah.
And then, like, Jim Henson will also probably get you there, because a lot of people think that they were trying to ape, like, what the Jim Henson Creature Shop did for the turtle costumes and for Toka and Razar. But like that is a thing where like what the Battle Nexus represents to me, it was so interesting seeing people talking about it, because the main villain of the whole piece is Savanti Romero, who is a character that was introduced in the 8th issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a failed time master. Like, he was trained to be a time master, but his megalomaniacal desires made him not worthy in the eyes of the time master. I can't remember his name right now. I think it might just be the time master. And that is why Renette...
Simultaneous?
Yeah, simultaneous. Lord Simultaneous. Thank you. Siegen's good.
Yeah, simultaneous. Yeah.
I get... that Lord Simultaneous.
Well, it's Simultaneous, who is clearly just fucking Galactus in some like warped way.
He's
like,
little.
All
He's
I could think
tiny
the entire time is I
Galactus.
was like,
He's pocket-sized Galactus.
yeah, he's just like a mini Galactus.
Yeah, he's wonderful. So he casts out Romero and he starts
Just
training.
devours moons.
Yeah. Only dwarf planets, please. I'm watching my figure. I wondered why I haven't seen Pluto in the night sky lately. So he begins training Renette to be, as a time mistress, to be the eventual, like, takeover for him. And those are characters that have existed, like I said, since the 8th issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And with Battle Nexus coming out and reusing characters who are 40 years old within it, a lot of people, like, it was fun seeing people discover that these are like evergreen characters. Evergreen's not what I mean. Simultaneous is sort of it. I kind of think of how, like, you know, the Fallen from Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen? Yeah. I swear I can make this work. The Fallen, in his design, he is Megatronus. Have you ever seen Transformers 1? Did you see that one yet? The animated film? From 2 years ago?
Transformers 1. No.
Okay.
For a second, I was like, you mean with, like, Lipwiki or whatever the fuck his name is? But no.
Sam Witwicky? No. So Transformers 1 was the animated film. They do a lot of service regarding the primes. So there were 13 primes, and they were the first Transformers. And the whole lore behind those is that in every universe, they exist as the same entity. So, like, Prima Prime is always Prima Prime. Solus Prime is always Solus Prime. Megatronus is always Megatronus Prime. Like, that's the thing. The idea, this was taken up, I don't know which one came first, right? Because ideas in comics are difficult like that. But Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman confirmed that Lord Simultaneous, Renette, and Romero, they are always the same character whenever the Turtles come upon them. Because they are multiversal beings, you're not running into different universes, versions of these characters. You're running into that character again. So it provides a bit of continuity for the reader, even though, like, this Michelangelo has never met Renette. So it's always been, like, an interesting sort of thing. And then in reading Battle Nexus, like, that's very clearly kind of what they're still going with. Like, it's supposed to be Savanti Romero that we have all known. Like, all of his desires and intentions are the same. Same with Simultaneous and Renette and everything that's going on there. But it was really interesting to see people who are new fans to the Ninja Turtles discover that for the first time. And initially, like, my reaction was like, oh, like, how did you guys not know this? And then it was like, because they haven't been reading these books since they were, 5 years old, Devin. Like, this is them discovering it like you discovered it for the first time. They're just discovering it because there's finally a book out. There's a crossover series that is all about that fact. Because that's really, like, the thing, is that, like, I didn't really think of this as, like, it is a crossover of all the Ninja Turtles continuities. I feel like such an idiot.
It's their Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, that's what it is it's their... I enjoy it for that. Like, I think it was a really, really good series. Did we say this on Mike, but I'm totally intending on grabbing the trade of it when it
No.
gets
That we
printed.
said that as we were preparing to make sure that we could actually talk about it. I think that's my only real complaint about it. You get such fan service, whether you've been a Ninja Turtle for 1 year or for 42 years, there is so much service that like speaks to people who know the Ninja Turtles. You're not going to read this and be like, oh, nothing in this worked for me. Because they do a good job trying to make sure that there's representation everywhere. Even if it's just in the Mr. Og backup strips that are like old Sunday cartoons that see them all like interacting in like the space beyond the Battle Nexus.
Yeah, and like I think even if this is the first time you ever read a turtle story, I think they do a really good job of laying the groundwork for you to kind of get what's happening, right? You're not going to get the nuance of the jokes. You're not going to necessarily care so much, but I think you would understand what's happening the whole time.
Certainly. I certainly agree with that. I also, to go back to the Splintered Fate complaint of Raphael has never called Alapex Al, he definitely calls her Al in this. And I really enjoyed that. I really dug that. He's like, Al, that's the thing. You were always part of our family. Though they also do a good job at like, because Savante scooped all of these competitors from different points in their continuity, Alapex still has the purple on her face, which means that it is before her like not what am I talking about? Redemption arc where it becomes blue. Where like through ninja magic it becomes blue. And then you know that Alapex is good from that point forward. So they also get to like have a nice moment of reconciling things from the past. It's just a really good book. And the only problem I have is that buying it issue to issue the way that I did, it was never satisfying. Like, buy this in the trade paperback form. If you're a fan of Ninja Turtles, get the entire story. Because the issues, they're like 20 pages of content.
Yeah.
And it's just not enough. Like, the whole thing feels like it moves so fast. Conflicts are introduced and resolved on like the same page sometimes. And like, well,
I think more importantly, conflicts are introduced that then don't happen, right? Like I like the whole setup of the fight with Metalhead, and I adore the way that it plays out with Donnie, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it is essentially a non-starter, right? So like you're given this huge splash page on the issue before, and I will say that I enjoyed that. Every issue ends with some giant like splash page of what the next like fight is going to be, and they're just awesome. But you're given this big promise about the fight with Metalhead, and then like that is not necessarily where that issue goes, right?
Yeah. That's very true. Or like
unsatisfying is definitely fair.
Yeah, all of the splash pages of Mikey fighting Slash, which like, and then that goes like that is representation that is very different on the cover from what we actually get to see within the final issue of this book. And I like it. Right. I do understand it, but reading this week to week, I'm like the best thing that they did for this is that new issues released every 2 weeks. It's legitimately what got me to purchase these as they were releasing. Was the fact that I know I'm not gonna be satisfied after I read just one of these, but I don't have to wait a month or 2 months to get my next fix of this story. 2 week, like a bi-weekly release schedule really fit this whole thing. And it represents how long this was probably like in production. I think that if they could have dropped this for the 40th anniversary, they definitely would have.
Yeah.
And they just waited until it was all their ducks were in a row in order to be able to do like a bi-weekly release so that people could enjoy what they were getting. So I recommend it. It is really good. Like it's a good turtle story. There's fan service for everybody. Wait for the trade paperback though. And let's see when that's coming out, right? Like this is not sponsored in any way, shape or form. If you hadn't picked that up, because like we have not given near enough information to satisfy a sponsor. We're being kind of cagey about it, right? Where sponsors will be like, yeah, no, tell everybody everything about this so that they want to go buy it.
Yup.
While I look this up, is there anything else you wanted to make sure we talked about this week? Like, there is one other thing.
I saw that you've been playing that game. I threw your way.
Yes, thank you for that. I only started today, and that is because let's see, when do we have the trade paperback's going to be?
We did do Scott Pilgrim.
We did do Scott Pilgrim, and that's sort of what's been taking me out. August 12th, 2026 is when the trade paperback comes out for Battle Nexus. It'll be 128 pages, and yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
128 pages, recommended price of $20.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to see what's in it when it first comes out, but it's the kind of thing that if they ever, maybe they are going to a day one, but if they ever put out like a really nice edition, like maybe hardcover with like some added material and stuff, like I would probably want to have something like this on my shelf. It is such a good celebration of the Turtles that like I think it merits like that kind of collector's edition like place on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised at how far out that release is. Like, I would have think they would want to aim for May for the actual anniversary.
Well, they might be planning for like a re-release. Maybe
they could do that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised
like
if this got reprints, a second run or something like that. But yeah, and IDW, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually they did like a nice hardcover director's cut that like, because so many creatives came together to put this story together.
Oh my God! Yeah, some of the art of different characters in it was in issue 3. I can't remember who the artist was on that one, but was just like it was so good. I was like screenshotting pieces of it.
Yeah. Like the art specifically, like they got a lot of the artists to come back to do their continuities. Like, they don't all look the same because they're all in the IDW continuity. You're still able to look at Archie Raff and be like, well, that's Archie Raff. And the Shredder, like, as great as that Mirage line is, he's also in black and white, which is an established trope from Turtles Forever. That, like, from in the Mirage universe, they don't have color. So it's just some really good stuff. But yeah, to finish this off, I know there's going to be a long episode. I'd like to... Well, first of all, I platinumed Resident Evil Requiem. I did it in less than 24 hours of gameplay, which felt pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie to you. Insanity mode is fucking insane. Like, even with infinite ammo and shit. Because there's plenty of moments where it's still just survive. Make smart choices. So,
good shit, man.
Like, real, like, good. The big thing with Resident Evil Requiem, and I'm going to ask this at the end, because I want to finish on Resident Evil Requiem, but know that there's a speedrun question that's up in the community right now, and I'd love to hear your take on it, Sejin. Now that I'm going to be speedrunning Resident Evil Requiem, but I love watching them, I don't have the patience for the type of shit that you have to do it. But before we get there, let's talk about Scott Pilgrim EX. We played it together, and I have to say, it feels like another example of a game that was marketed on the co-op that is just not optimized for co-op at all. Thoughts?
I don't think it's that bad. I agree that it's not optimized, but like I don't think that it is. You know, it's a little bit like Super Mario Brothers U. I really, or Wii U? Was the full name?
Yeah, Super Mario Brothers Wii U.
Yeah. The co-op in that one is chaos, and it works because it's Nintendo, and they always somehow make the dumb idea actually work really well. But like, you know, there's no real benefit to playing with more people, but there's also no real harm in playing with more people, right? The only real benefit in playing with more people in that game is that like you can stay alive a little bit longer, maybe, unless you're all friggin' idiots.
Yeah,
like
if you all die at the same time.
Right. So the co-op, it feels in that game a little bit like an afterthought, like something they were like, yeah, let's let people do this. It's not the way that we would recommend playing it, but like, yeah, it's not going to hurt you to do it this way. It's not going to break the game to do it this way. I feel a lot of the same way about Scott Pilgrim X. Is that as we were playing it, like I was happy to be playing with friends, and I thought it was going great because otherwise I don't have a lot of drive or motivation to go through beat 'em ups. So like being able to do so with people that I like hanging out with and playing video games with was fun, you know. And so like in that regard, like I think that the multiplayer is doing what it needs to do for me, but it's not a game that I feel requires it or asks for it. And then, like you said, is not really optimized for it. The way that certain things happen and the way that certain things behave, you know, on a meta level, like the way that the upgrading and the save systems work and shit like that, like we're very obviously geared towards a one player experience. So like, yeah, it's not optimized for multiplayer, but I also don't think that the multiplayer version of it's broken in any way.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well, I mean, we did break it. Let's not pretend that there wasn't a moment where you got stuck in a loading area, because that was weird.
But I don't think that
that's. I don't
call it. It doesn't break it in a way that like it makes the game easier. What makes it less fun, right? Like because all that happened is I just bounced back in, and I was able to reconnect.
And it was nice that you could reconnect.
It was silly, but it did not really harm our experience.
True, that's true. I don't know. It's just that like I've now beaten it 3 times, and I'm on my way to 4 more clears of the game, because you have to. In order to get the platinum trophy, you have to beat it 7 times with each of the characters. And there's no, you know, I tried to scum it, and I know scum is the word for it. I tried to do a save right before the final boss, because it's not one of those games where you can continually fight the final boss. You have to go New Game Plus if you want to carry over all of your stuff. So yeah, that's a thing that exists in the game, for better or for ill. But
how does it measure if you change characters, or is that not available in the single player mode?
So you can change
those doors that would let you do a
So you can change characters. So what I did this morning, I beat it as Matthew Patel. I saw Matthew Patel's ending, or AKA Evil X #1, in case you don't remember their names, right? So I beat it as Matthew Patel, and then I reloaded the save that I had backed up to the PlayStation Cloud prior to clearing the final boss. Went to the final boss as Lucas Lee, beat the final boss with Lucas Lee, and then the ending rolled, and I still got Matthew Patel's ending. So I honestly think I'm like, I kind of want to test this. It's whoever you beat the game the most quests are cleared with, that's the person who's like you end up getting the end of. But there's a trophy for beating 7 different bosses with 7 different X's that is not called 7 X's for 7 bosses, which feels like a missed opportunity for me. But that's because I'm a big fan of 7 Brothers for 7 Brothers. But it's like Battle Royale, I think is what they ended up calling that trophy. And it's to bring a different character to beat 7 of the bosses, which can only be completed after 8 bosses, because the second Metal Scott fight does not count as a boss fight. For some reason, this is the type of shit that I've done with this game, just for the record.
No, but that boss is the same boss. You've already beaten him once, so it's not a 7th boss. Or whatever.
So I guess that, so I mean, I understand it. But, sorry, I'm all over. Roxy was the character that I beat the first quest with. And so in the final screen, because it shows you which character you completed each quest with at the end of the game, her name was bolded and all of the other names were not bold. So I wonder whoever you complete the first quest with is who you get the ending for.
Yeah.
And so that's something I'm willing to like possibly test out, because I was a little like, I think
that's my one criticism of this game. It's not clear about fucking anything. It really, really, really isn't clear about specifically the mechanics. Because like when we were all playing together, we couldn't figure out if the leveling up that we were seeing was applying to all of us, only the main person,
only who collects it. Here's a fun thing. Dale was like, every time I eat this, it increases my vitality. And you and I were like, no, that's probably not the case. It is definitely the fucking case.
Well, no. She was saying every time it gets the health thing, it was raising her stuff. Vitality raises your major health level, but the health items didn't overdo you. That was what I was saying.
But the one that she was talking about was adding +1 to her vitality, so it was raising her HP.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are some items that
I was saying that as long as it's a vitality stat, that raises your maximum HP, but the rest of it is just healing you. And I thought she was trying to overpower her healing by eating shit when she was full, and I was like, I don't think that works that way.
Right.
So that's where I was getting confused.
So yeah, you can't overheal what your highest thing is, but each of the 4 stats, willpower, strength, vitality, and agility, they can be leveled up to level 64. That is the highest for each of them. And you start at level 16, which I think is a really nice callback to the fact that the highest level you could reach in the first Scott Pilgrim beat-em-up game was 16. So it assumes that you were level 16 in that game from the start of this game. And then, each level that you attain in those 64 adds to that 16. So I don't even know what my levels are, but they're like in the 200s for some of the characters who have maxed out. What I was arguing there was like in River City Girls, when you eat a food item that increases, say, your vitality, it only does it the first time you eat that food item. So you can't power level yourself that way. You have to find all of the foods that boost vitality and eat those in order to max out your vitality stat. Same with all of the other things. So I thought that that's what was happening in this game. No. Like, to find out, eventually you, get into the video store, and there are 4 videos available. Each of them adds 8 to one of the 4 major stats. And so to power level, you buy 8 of any of those, and you're at level 64. And they're $20 for that. So to power level, it's $160 into any stat. So it's an interesting sort of mechanic. Also, if you're going to play the game again, Sejin, I recommend, and I don't know why the game doesn't recommend this, playing the training mode on the main menu. For a game that starts with a mandatory tutorial, right? Well, you could say no to Wallace, but you do need to talk to Wallace, and he does offer you a tutorial on how to play the game. That tutorial is so truncated that you would think the game just has nothing going on. Like, playing that training taught me so much about the game as a whole. The Wallace Wells tutorial only tells you about tech moves, like hitting down and the triangle button, the strong attack button. You also have an up and strong attack like move. You have hop moves.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Is like it's not that I don't doubt that this information is available somewhere in the game, but the fact that it is not more surfaced for players is, I think, a detriment to the game.
Huge detriment. Huge detriment. Come on, I do that tutorial and it tells you about things like how to build a combo and all of this. You would think that tutorial gives you is supposed to give you a pretty fair grasp on the game. It doesn't even scratch the surface. Mm-hmm. Remember when you were like, how did you charge that attack? Do they have to charge? There's a whole thing on charging attacks. There's a whole subsection on charged attacks in the actual training
and I couldn't figure out why I had a sword as this character, and so why was I not able to charge my sword? And it's because it's only on weapons that you pick up that you can do that charge.
Exactly. Attack. But you can charge that sword. It's just a 3-second hold down of the strong attack button. And that's it's such a deep game that I'm glad I did the training on. But, like, the only reason I did the training was because there was a trophy for it. Like, I finished the game before I went through the training. That was like, oh, there's so much more going on in this game. All of the characters felt very the same to me, but each of the characters has their own training tutorial that, like, points out what the differences are between them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of just crazy that, like, you have to go to a secondary menu to learn the proper way to play the game, when it does give you a tutorial in the actual story.
It feels very fighting game, like not beat 'em up. It feels very fighting game, like Soul Calibur or Mortal Kombat. Like I know, like that's the way that you will learn how to play characters in those games, right? Is you would go into the training area, but like that is just part of that genre, right? Like, so it's like jumping in a Mario game. You just inherently know that's going to be something you're going to be able to do, right?
Yeah, it's straight,
not necessarily in a beat 'em up.
Like, we all understand, like, it's a pretty well-known fact that Final Fight started as a sequel to Street Fighter, so there's clearly crossover between fighting games and beat 'em ups in the DNA of the genre, but, like, that's real fighting game in my beat 'em up. For better or for ill. But where you're like, the game is like, it doesn't give you information. It does. It just expects you to go to the weirdest place to find it. Like, if there were no tutorial, like, if there were a moment where it's like, we recommend you go do the training stuff, that would be great. But for Wall as Well as to give you, like, a super truncated tutorial that touches on some but not all of the moves that are in your kit, that feels like it's pushing you away from doing the training. Like, yeah, don't worry about that. That's for, like, the tryhards. But it tells you how to resurrect each other, right? Like, I don't know. So it's I've really enjoyed it as a single player experience. I'll definitely want to play it with you again. But for Scott Pilgrim EX, I'd wait for a sale, is I think how I would finish my review of that game.
Okay.
I don't know if it's worth $28.
Yeah. If I had paid $15 for it, I think I'd feel a lot better about it.
Right. But, you know, this is what we do. We do it for the show. We do it so we can have these conversations. The story is very cool for being just Sonic CD turned up to 11. And there's some great references to, like, video games and gaming culture. So, like, it's also not by Ubisoft, right? Which was what really made me happy, that I didn't have to give Ubisoft more money. I wouldn't have given Ubisoft more money. I don't like the company. I haven't bought a Ubisoft game, God, in like 10 years. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think it's been 10 years since I've bought a Ubisoft game. So, yeah. Now this brings us to Resident Evil Requiem and the speedrun question that divided the community for a while, though it seems like they've agreed. I'd like to hear your take on it. They skip the intro for the speedrun. And I don't mean like the intro video. I mean, have you played any Resident Evil Requiem? Like, you know a little bit about the start of it? Like, what can I say that, like, not going to be hyper spoilery for, like, anybody here? Or
yeah,
for you
so, like, I have seen... I'm trying to remember the last kind of thing that I experienced in it. I think it was the cop turning around and being a zombie at that point, and then, like, her trying to get away.
Yeah. Okay.
From that guy.
Yeah. So have you played the game? Are you playing Requiem yet, or?
I'm trying. I'm not good at it.
That's okay.
It's the old Resident Evil problem for me, is that, like, you know, these later ones, I know why everybody wanted to get away from the tank controls and all that stuff, but, like, that's just how I was good at Resident Evil, and
I
now
understand
I'm not anymore.
I get it. All right. So that whole thing with Grace in the hotel, you do not play that.
Yeah.
And
what?
They don't play that for the speedrun.
But that's the game.
Yes, I know. I agree. They also do not do the Leon part that follows Grace in the hotel. They do nothing in Renwood. Then? They start from Grace waking up at Rhodes Hill Care Center. Like the speed run is load a game that starts there.
Why? What's the reasoning?
I don't know. Like I imagine the reasoning is just like this doesn't feel. I can't. I honestly I have not been able to find reasoning.
Is there something that happens very RNG in it that like they feel like it's not fair or something? Dude, that's usually the reason that they skip things, is that if there's like a moment in the beginning that like sets up or dictates something later on that they don't want you to like fuck with it.
Straight up, there is stuff that needs to be done in the Leon section following the hotel that is agreed upon, because the Resident Evil Requiem is broken in one small way, and that is the fact that you can never go back to new game state. Once you have completed Resident Evil Requiem, this is an important thing for people to know who are playing the game, you can never return the game to the original state that you played it in. I'm sure if you reinstalled it or things like that, you'd be able to. But even then, I don't know. I don't know how they're like backing it up. But you know how I talked about the tracker that like tracks kills that Leon gets like halfway through the game?
This is the one with the age question too, right?
Yeah, this is the one with the age question as well.
And like you can never get it back to a point where it asks you that, right?
By all accounts, this will not be able to be changed. Yeah. That's what it says. That's what we read on the show last week. Once you beat it, Leon starts with that in his inventory. So you start collecting combat points from the second you take control of Leon. So what they do in that Leon section that follows the hotel is there's a path that you go on to make sure that when you start as Leon again in the Rhodes Hill Care Center, from the save that you're loading to do the speed run, you have X amount of combat points so that you can purchase items that you'll need for the speed run. It's just so heavily curated that it feels like it's not a speed run anymore.
Like is that why they're saying it's not worth doing that first part, is because it's basically everybody would have to do everything exactly this way anyway to get to this point, so it's really not worth including that in the metric?
I honestly, I can't find any justification behind it. I feel like it
sounds like that's maybe what they're getting at, which I kind of see the logic behind, but like, I don't know. Part of it for me is like the endurance, right? Like somebody that can make it through that and do everything perfect the rest of the way is like part of the math in a speed run, right? Like sometimes it's not whether or not like somebody can do a boss fight really well. There might be somebody that can do the boss fight better, but the problem is that they're really bad at doing that boss fight better 3 hours in. You know, on the spot they can, but after playing for so long, they just don't have it in them. Whereas somebody else who maybe isn't so hot at that boss fight, but they've got it in them when they get there, is going to do much better. So, like, to remove an entire section for what seems like just because it's like, well, it's inconsequential because everybody will do it the same way. That's not a good reason to me. But, you know, I'm not a speedrunner either, so, like, what do I know?
Right. So the leaderboards are currently closed. They open in 9 days. Message from the moderators, nothing there yet. There's the forum. There's a Discord, so I guess I could join the Discord. I don't want to do that right now. I can have more information to answer your questions as to why they want to do that.
Yeah.
But it's just so... It feels so against what it is. Like, honestly, from a speedrunning standpoint, it feels like it's to minimize the amounts of resets. Because there are just moments that can go so wrong in that intro that, like... But it's like, but yeah, then you have to do the intro perfectly in order to do it. Like, it's the same thing that, like... Everybody knows how to play 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers. So now we start the speed run from level 1-2. Like, what are you talking
Right.
about?
Well,
Like,
but that's what I'm saying, right? Is like if the assumption is just that like, well, in order to get to this point, you would have to have been perfect anyway. So let's just assume that you did perfect, and now let's start from here. Is like that seems counter to the idea that you want to watch somebody do this perfectly.
right, exactly. It seems like it almost feels like, do you want not want people to be able to run up the combat points as Leon? So we've agreed that like you need to start with X amount of combat. Like there has to be some reason behind it, but it's just so difficult for me to come to terms with that they're skipping what is a whole part of the game. You yourself, as someone playing the game, like are having some difficulties in that section. And I'm not saying that in any sort of negative way, but like there is stuff that you need to do in that section in order to progress in the game. It's not like it's all on rails, right? That moment where like the cop turns and is a zombie, you have to avoid dying to him because he's trying to shoot you with a shotgun, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're stuck, right?
And you're stuck on a nail. Like there's stuff that needs to happen in that moment, and it just seems so weird to me. We're not doing that part.
It is. This speaks to why I am not a speedrunner, because speedrunning is interesting to me up to the point where you're then no longer playing the game, which is what this clearly is. You're no longer playing the game at this point. You're just trying to do the mechanics as fast as you can. That's not the whole game though, right? Like, so to me, like I really like the speedruns of like Resident Evil 1 because in theory that game takes place in about 2 hours. Like I think 2 hours is the timing on that whole storyline. Like IRL, like it's supposed to just be like they show up at midnight. Then no, I guess maybe it's a little bit more than 2 hours. It's like 6 or 7 hours, but it is definitely supposed to be within a time frame that is a lot less than I have ever played that game. When I play Resident Evil 1, I will say the lowest time I think I've ever played that game in is probably about 25 hours. Maybe I got it down to 20 at some point. But like part of that is because I explore a lot. Part of that is because I die a lot. But like there's a lot going on that you should be able to do in that game in a certain amount of time. That speedrunning is really interesting to watch that because it really adds that kind of frantically paced element of we only have until this amount of time to do it. And it's really cool seeing people actually trying to do this and prove like what it would be like to be in this situation, to do this. It adds a sense of urgency and immersion that I can really get behind. But the second that you're like, nah, we're going to cut out a third of the game because it just doesn't really matter to us, is like, okay, so then it's not about that. It's not about immersion any longer. It is actually about distancing yourself as much as possible, and you're literally only looking at this thing as the machine that it is rather than the piece of art that it is, and that sucks to me.
Yeah, because as me, like this is why I was developing other terms besides speed running during the pandemic when I was like, do I want to start streaming like with any sort of like semi-regularity? I don't really want to call myself a speed runner because I also want to experience like the game. I want that to be part of what I'm doing. like I don't know. I think it's really interesting that the in-game timer for Resident Evil Requiem pauses during cutscenes, and they base your runtime off of the in-game timer. That's what they determine it on. And it's like,
okay,
so if you need a break, you can just let a cutscene play. And to me, like, that's like, that also seems against speed running, where like cutscenes are sometimes part of it. Like being able to mash through a cutscene is such a big part of so many like RPG speedruns, you know? Or being
I just think about like the deepest speedrunners that I have seen like in real life in front of me do their work have been Kingdom Hearts of all games, the Kingdom Hearts speedrunners. Yeah. And there is an element to that about menuing correctly and getting through the cutscenes correctly, like the button pressing elements. And again, this is where it goes beyond being enjoyable for me because it's no longer
right
about
there with you.
The game. It's just right, yeah. But part of that speedrunning community is exactly what you're talking about. Is like being there. The in-game scene starts. You know what's going to happen at the end of it, so you're preparing yourself to make the next move, and like that's all part of it. And so the second that you remove that, like, what are you even? What is the what are you doing? What does this
like
represent anymore? What does this number mean anymore? When you're like, I can finish the Resident Evil Requiem in 3 hours and 20 minutes, and you're just like, yeah, but to what end? Like, what it like, and so what?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so I'll have a little bit more information on it. By the next time we recorded an episode, the leaderboards, well, they won't be open. They'll still be 2 days before. So you know what? After the leaderboards open, we can revisit this topic. You'll have played the game a little bit more so we can discuss things. But in terms of things that have been discussed, and I've been watching a lot of people who are like trying to root what the speed run of this game will be. And the biggest thing that keeps coming up is the skipping of the intro. And almost nobody seems down with it, but everybody like kind of agrees that it's a necessary evil. So that's the other thing. Like a lot of people are like, well, it's part of the game. And there are things in it that you have to do. Like you have to be quick accessing the key on the back of the picture, right? Like you don't want to spin it too far. And you have to be quick picking up the right photo from the bed to trigger Grace's like memory. Like those are all things that feel like the tech of the speedrun. So it feels weird to lose it. That said, going back to Scott Pilgrim EX's for a brief moment, Dale and I did a run through before we started recording today, couch co-op styles. And she found a lovely little skip. I'm going to give her the credit right here because after the fifth quest, you need a key for the sixth quest, and there's a key that you can find in the fifth area. And Dale's like, I'm bringing this with us. I think we'll probably need it at some point. And like, she was right. And you are able to bring that key that you find in the high school to the next area, and it allows you to skip like 7 forced fights. Like it would be a huge time save if they don't patch that out. Like if it stays in there, she stumbled upon, cause like the sixth thing is to go back in time to like to medieval times, and you need a key in order to unlock the castle in medieval times. So you have to go and find a key, and that requires like a forced fight in Castlevania, another forced fight in Castlevania once you have the key, and then a third forced fight like the Takedo gang, right? I don't know if we ever came across the Takedo gang when we were playing together, but like, and it's like the little guy, right? The little orcish guy. Yeah, so we did. Like it skips all of those, and it skips all the travel to go get the key. If the key that you find in the high school, you just bring with you. Like, we literally skipped an entire mission by Dale being like, we might need this key, I'm going to carry it.
Good on her. That's fucking great. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And that feels like a skip in the game. That's not saying as a community, we're not going to do this. That is finding an exploit in the game and using it to get through the game faster.
And also, I would argue that the context of it being within a Scott Pilgrim video game, a video game that is based on a movie, based on a comic book, based on a video game, it is so up its own ass about that kind of shit already that I would argue that it's actually kind of in the spirit of doing a Scott Pilgrim speedrun is to do something like that, right?
Sejin, I really hope you get to finish the story, because the plot device at the very end of the game is exactly what you're talking about. It goes so far up its own ass, it comes out its mouth. That's what happens at the end of Scott Pilgrim EX.
Nice.
And yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, right?
All right. With that, I need to go.
I think it's time to end it. Yes, I'm sorry. All right. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Stay Report. If you want to keep the conversation going, we have a Discord server that we'd like you to join. Invitations to join are available wherever we are on social media, which as of this recording is still X and was Facebook and X, formerly Twitter. I almost forgot about Facebook. We're still on that one too. The links to click are in our bios on either of those pages. Click, you can join join the Discord. If you're not on social media, no one's going to blame you for that. You can send an email to thesayreport@gmail.com. We can facilitate you with a link to join the Discord, or if Discord is still a bit too much for this, just send the emails to thesayreport@gmail.com. And the most important thing to remember is that if you're sending an email for me, Devin Decker, or for him, Stephen Sarwick, put our first name in the subject line so that we can distribute it appropriately to the Say Reporter of your choosing, and they'll be the only one who gets to read your correspondence. But please keep in mind, if you send something to Sejin that he thinks is worthy of sharing on the show, he might share it on the show. Any submissions are subject to being featured on the show. Just understand it, right? For legal reasons. All that said, again, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Say Report. We will see you next time, and William, please bring us home. Later.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Sarwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.